true story of the Queen Isabella Causeway collapse.
All right, so Robert, what's going on, man?
Not a whole lot, man. Still,
Episode 3.
Episode 3.
So we're on our mission to chipping away at everything that's going on with the Queen Isabella collapse story.
It's coming along.
It's coming along. And today we have a very special guest. And why don't you cue that up for us? Let us know who's going to be coming on.
So Roland is Roland Moya was with me on the boat that night, and he's my cousin. His late father and my mother are siblings. So somos primos hermanos. And his brother Leroy, who has still not yet reached out back to me to let me know whether or not he wants to participate. We still got our fingers crossed. But Roland did say that due to the weather, he couldn't come into the studio, but he would love for us to give him a call, and we could pick each other's brains and kind of toss around what happened that night. So
yeah, I think that's super important because we just don't want this to be from your point of view.
Correct.
We want to gather as much information from this and dissect everything that we possibly can, because you quite possibly could have missed something.
I'm sure I did. I'm sure I did. There were 4 sets of eyes that night. Tony, Leroy, Roland, and myself. So getting Roland's input and intake or memories of that evening should prove useful.
Awesome. And before we call Roland, we did reach out to the Port Isabel Police Department, and we are going to try to get the 911 calls from that night. And when I text you that, I was like, "Are you prepared for that?"
I'm not. I'm not. I don't. I'm curious to know how many people called. Because there were people fishing on the pier that evening as well. So they had a clear view of what was happening that evening too. So I'm assuming that not only us who were on the boat got to see everything called, because we all immediately started calling. I'm sure other people at that were maybe closing up Pirates Landing, maybe the staff or just other people who were driving around. I'm curious to know how many people called, and I know I myself called from the boat and was threatened by the lady who was answering the 911 calls. She, there were several, but the first lady hung up. She was like, "Sir, this is, you can't be crank calling or misusing this. It's it's a lifeline to other people. It's important that we keep these lines free." And called again, said the same thing immediately after I hung up on her, and the next person even told me, we can track your phone. We know where you're at. You can't be misusing this service. It was obvious to me that what I was witnessing couldn't even fit in some people's in their imagination. They couldn't even fathom that even when a 911 call came in, they still chose to believe that bridge was intact and that there's nothing out there that could have affected it. Yeah. So I am curious to see how many 911 responders reacted that way, because I know I experienced it.
Yeah. It's going to be very interesting phone calls, and we're going to try to get that as soon as possible. And then, of course, we'll have another podcast just showing that. And also, at the same time, we're still trying to get those affidavits. Correct. So we're on a search for as much content as possible.
It's our crusade now. Yeah. We got to do it.
So with your all's help, of course, help us along the way to help this story live again. Because with your help, this is RGV history, and I think with everybody's help, putting just a little bit in, we can tell a bigger story that's bigger than you, that's bigger than this, that's bigger than anything.
Maybe we should set up like a phone number or something where people can call in and be like, "Hey man, I experienced this, or I was on the pier," or X story that they might have. I think it'll prove interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's get down to the meat and bones of this podcast. Let's call up Roland, and let's see where that leads.
Awesome. Let me get him on the phone.
Hello.
Hey, Roland.
What's going on?
Not a whole lot, brother. What you doing?
Nothing, man.
Good. Listen, we're recording already, and
what's going on, Roland? It's Josh Morales, man.
Hey, Josh. How's it going?
Pretty good. Thanks for doing this, man. I know it means a lot to Robert and, of course, everybody, what we're trying to do here. So,
yeah, no problem. I got to hear both versions of it. Well, not versions, but both episodes or whatever you want to call it. Pretty spot on, man. So whatever I could add to it is pretty good.
Absolutely, and I think that's what me and Robert were talking about, is that we want to try to get as many people's perceptions of what happened that night. That way, because obviously he can't remember everything, and you are in one place, so you have different eyeballs on everything. So we kind of want you all to have that conversation about what you saw differently than he did.
Right.
So I'm gonna step out, and you all do your thing, man.
Hey, Roland. So I texted you yesterday. I said, "Hey, man, what time did the first 911 call come in, or like, do you remember what time it was more or less?" And you're like, "Yeah, it was at 2:02 a.m." What do you remember that that really stands out about that night? Because it was late.
Well, here's the big part, and I think when you finally get a hold of our written statement to the Port Isabel Police that we did at the Port Isabel Police Department, I think it's where you're going to really see where all this ties together. Where we're not just a bunch of guys that were bullshitting about what happened out there. But one of the biggest things that I think, I mean, maybe you didn't remember because you weren't part of it, was when I called. I know the reason I know the time of day that it was is when I called the 911. I don't know. You're gonna get goosebumps right now. Remember that I kept saying they got. Hey, by the way, this is the Tarantino version, so I dropped a couple of F-bombs. Sorry about it.
No worries, man. Go ahead.
Yeah, but remember I told you, man, they got some fucking foreigner on 911 today. The guy can't understand me, and I called back again 911, and it was the same guy that answered, and he had this real strong. It wasn't even Mexican accent, because I even tried speaking to him in Spanish, but like a Middle Eastern or Indian accent the guy had, and and then we brought it up. It's gonna be in my testimony, because I was pissed about it, because.
It's ringing a bell, man. I remember you kind of like yelling at the phone and stuff, but everybody was calling 911.
Yeah, and the thing about it is that how I remember it so big is because I was really pissed about it, because I mean, how could you, it's a couple of days after 9/11, we're supposed to be on high alert. How do you not have someone at the 911 call center that's going to take any call seriously? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so I mentioned this. So the boys know what's going on. I kind of told them, hey, play this. Your Uncle Robert is doing this podcast. Tell me what you think. Because I think the kids don't really understand what a big deal it was to what we did.
They don't. They have no idea.
Yeah, it's just like, my dad went fishing, and for them, it's like we helped some guy with some gas. That's how mild it is.
It is in their minds. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So I guess Aaron had mentioned it to Hope, which is my ex-wife, and so I just texted her and I said, "Hey, any chance that there's a file there with some of the stuff from what happened on the Causeway?" And she was like, "Yeah, I got a boatload of this stuff, because remember, she worked for Frank."
I remember that. That's right. In fact, that's how Frank came into play. I was telling Josh that after the accident, the Texas Rangers and all of these federal entities gathered us up and like hauled us to the police station and threw us in the broom closet.
And let me tell you something you also didn't mention that it really got me chills and really freaked me out. Is that when we walked over there. It was a short walk.
Yeah, they walked us.
Yeah, but remember when we made the curve around the building and all the families were there saying, "Did you see this car? Did you see that
you're
car?"
Right. They were family members on the other side of the yellow caution tape, holding up pictures of their loved ones, Dude, you did give me goosebumps right there, bro. Like, real talk, I remembered that, and there was a lady holding a picture of a red Mustang that we all saw go over.
Oh yeah, and it seems like every car did you see this car? Did you see that car? Whatever.
Every single
car
person.
Every car they said, "Did you see?" Yeah, we saw it.
I remember that clearly now.
And then the one thing that's just burned in my brain, man, is the grandmother of that little kid. I don't even know his name. Welch, I think, was the little blonde little kid.
Mm-hmm.
The grandma asking us, "Did you see?" I don't remember what car, but her face, because asking us if we saw it. No, and us knowing, yes, we did.
Yeah.
And then later putting two and two together who she was. But I remember the grief on that lady's face, man, forever haunts.
That little boy lost both his parents that night in that crash.
Yeah.
Roland, I told this to Josh the other day. what would the attorneys refer to that child as? Do you remember?
The golden child.
The golden child.
You know, speaking of douchebags, because they're all douchebags. The attorneys, they were all involved. They were there to help and benefit, and that's why we were silenced, Robert.
Yep.
They needed our. They were leeching off of our emotions. You know, we were all diagnosed with post traumatic stress.
1,000%.
All of us, and they didn't care that we were suffering from what we went through and the haunts, the memories, the nightmares. They didn't care about that. What they cared about was, you guys need to be a part of this because we need you not to say anything that's not going to help the case.
Correct.
And so I kind of started, like, you know, so I mentioned this to Hope, and she's like, "Yeah, let me get this file together. I know I got it," because after she quit, and the case was already put to sleep, she kept a file on us, that she kept copies of us. So she's gonna look for that, and I'll have her.
And that would be phenomenal.
Send it to you.
I remember.
I bet you those statements are in there. So there's not even any need to have to go through any,
that
open
would be
records request.
Phenomenal. Hope did work for Frank Enriquez, who we all know took his life too. I remember being in the Brownsville courtroom, and all of these attorneys would.
Oh man, I took notes, Robert. That's like number 5. You skipped number 5 on my notes. Yeah, no,
these attorneys were giddy over this accident, man, and they would joke and refer to that child as a golden child
because they knew they were going to get a big payday.
They were going to have a huge payday, and
huge.
Those sons of bitches would just be laughing and joking, and as soon as the people who lost loved ones would come in or start, shuffling into their demeanors would change, and they would, like a fucking switch, they would just turn it off. And
I see. And
all of a sudden everybody's real grim and bleak, and we were disgusted with it, man. And I remember having that conversation with Roland and everybody.
Damn.
And the important thing is, the reason that we got to witness this firsthand is that we were a bunch of kids that were in there. They didn't know who we were at the time. Mm-mm. We got a little dressed up. We thought we were going to be in front of cameras in the courtroom, etc. So they probably thought we were assistants to all these attorneys that were in there, because we were the first ones in the courtroom before the families were. And I remember specifically, you're going to remember this part too, bro. This was the federal courthouse that we were in, and the defendant lawyers had flew in on a private jet. And the reason I know this and I remember this is because the guy was sitting at the where the judge sits at the bench, right? He's sitting at the bench, and he put his boots up on the desk, man, with a total disregard and respect for a federal courthouse, for a federal court building.
I remember that. Everybody kind of gasped a little bit, like, what's this guy doing?
And so when Frank came over to us, and it was actually a mediation. It was not anything else. It was a mediation why we were there to meet. And I remember they threw out this lowball number, like, this is what we'll give to the families or whatever. And I remember Frank telling someone, "No, we're not going to go with that. Whatever, the family, this kid lost his parents. People are dealing with this. The victims. We were there as witnesses, and then later found out that they threw us in the mix as part of the lawsuit." And that's kind of a shitty thing that Frank did. And, he's not here to defend himself, but, fuck him. He really did. He did wrong on us.
So what exactly happened with that then?
Well, this is what happened. We Robert mentioned it. We suffered burns, scrapes, bruisings. We got tossed into, and everyone was a part of it. And the deal that we went on forward going as part of the lawsuit is that if they weren't fine with it, then, we'll just go our happy ways, and that'll be the end of it. But they wanted us to be a part of it because there was a huge debate that night, and there probably still is today, whether the Causeway lights were on, because people will say, you'll hear more people say that they were on than that they were off. But we were there firsthand.
Correct.
We're the ones that saw it crossing the bridge. The barge didn't turn off the lights on the Causeway. They were already off.
That is correct. 1,000%.
So the impact didn't turn the lights off. They were already off. And when we started sharing that story and started being a part of it, well, now you think about it, the county and the state that maintains the highway and the lights, they don't want to be dragged into that. So what was the best thing to do? They threw us in with a lawsuit.
Pay you off.
It was it was sketchy. The whole thing was sketchy, man. From the attorneys to, they would dress us up and bring us with them to these mediations, and I remember on the way over with Frank he had this, what was it, like a big Suburban or a Cadillac Escalade or something that he would drive us all over there. It was all, he was all smiles and,
oh yeah,
happy,
it was
laughing, and then he would coach us right before we got off. All right,
Prep
guys.
you.
Yeah. All right, now everybody shut up and no more laughing or joking or, talking about BS. Now you guys are our witnesses. Now you guys are this and this and this. And we're like, well, all right, we did suffer. We did get burns, and it was a total disregard.
Wow.
Well, I think the biggest thing was the mental stress that we were under, the post-traumatic stress that we had suffered when this was said and done, and we finally got the diagnosis. I know that I never got to see another person to talk about what was going on, and that goes back to why Robert took the approach of let me write this down. And I remember you writing some books, Cherry Falls or something like that. I remember
that was the first name that I wanted to call it because the tail lights of the cars falling in the dark water looked like there were little cherries falling off of the bridge. And that was one of the names that I wanted to name it. And then a movie was released named or called Cherry Falls. So then I changed it to A Cry from Our Queen.
Roland, let me ask you this. What do you think about what Robert's doing now with this whole thing is pushing this out with all this information?
Well, I think it's good in so many levels. It's very therapeutic. I'll tell you that.
Isn't it?
It really is. And one of the most amazing things that I would like to share is that Robert had mentioned that there should have been other people with us. It should have been my brother, his brother should have been with us, and more importantly, my father should have been on the boat with us.
Absolutely.
And one of the things he said when we got back, and we didn't get back for maybe 30 some hours, and we were gone from the day from 2 a.m. when this started. We didn't return to our family for about 30 some hours. That's how long
they kept us in custody, in non-official custody, basically just sitting on a chair in a closet or sitting by a desk in a corner as if we had caused the accident almost.
Oh yeah, and I would love. I'm gonna screenshot the text message that I shared with Hope. She said, "Yeah, I remember you called me and said, hey, they're treating us like we did this shit. You need to get Frank over here."
That's correct.
And that's why Frank showed up. We didn't get a phone call to call Frank to come pick us up. And the only communication with Frank was when I told my ex-wife, hey, you need to call him because they're making it fucking seem like we did this. And that's why he showed up. And the only reason that we got let go and things calmed down is because remember that little shit that he had with him all the time, Ray?
Ray.
He showed up with a camcorder. And we started camcording everything that was going on. And so they let us go. They let us loose. But back to my old man. So we're away from our families for 30 some hours, and we met back at my apartment. And Robert and Leroy had little babies at the time. And I finally go home and see my dad at his place, and he gives me a hug. And my dad said, I'm very proud of what you did. And he goes, but I'm gonna tell you this right now, son. Had I been on the boat, and I'm gonna quote my old man. He said, those motherfuckers would be dead, because there's no way I was gonna allow my boys to get in harm's way to save complete strangers' lives. And that kind of chills up my spine as a 21, 22-year-old guy. Like, no, Dad, you're braver than that. You're better than that. Now, fast forward, I had my firstborn child, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. That's exactly what the old man meant. How dare I put my child in harm's way? So that's what he meant by those people are alive today because I didn't take that trip. And so we kind of were dumb for what we did, honestly. But I like to say it like this: we were at the right place at the wrong time. That's right. And did the right thing.
I told everybody, Roland, that I told you and Leroy, there's no way, man. I ain't bringing you guys near that. I'm getting you guys back
I remember.
home. You remember that?
Yeah, I remember that. I remember that specifically. I remember this. And when you said I kissed you on the forehead and on your bald head, and I said, let's do this. We got to save these people's life.
We got.
I mean, it was something just took over, man. It's just what's pretty freaking crazy is I saw that movie Alive last night. Where those guys in the Andes get caught in the snowstorm and they see each other and stuff like that. Well, John Malkovich narrates the movie, and one of the opening lines, and I kind of wrote it down because I didn't want to mess it up. It said, let me read it here. There's the God that we are taught in school, and then there's a God that's hidden by what surrounds us in civilization. That's the God I met on the mountain. Well, we met God on the ocean. And all these little things that happened that night made us be there at that time. And one of the biggest things that you forgot to mention, Robert, the second week, forget the small craft advisory, forget the guy at the bait shop and all that thing. Your brand new boat was overheating the first 100 yards from the dock because we forgot to put the water hose plug back in it.
Mm-hmm. And we were already going back to the dock to leave.
Right. And that's when we figured out that's when we remembered, wow, we gotta take this plug out so that the water could suck up from the ocean, But
to
all
cool
those
the motor.
So all the little things that happened that night that kept us in that specific area was God's way of having us there. And Robert hit it on the head, man. We're not very religious guys. You know? I went to church because someone was getting married or someone died, you know?
That's right. Tomato.
But all the things that happened that night, and one of the biggest things that's going to come out of this was the whole story about Rene Mata, about his mom signaling us to go to that direction. Now, this is another part that gives me chills that Robert forgot to mention, and maybe because that doesn't remember because Robert was piloting the vessel the entire time. But when we got in there, the body, lifeless body, he finally came to at the edge of the boat. He was a big guy. Robert hit it on. It was hard to get him up there. Mm-hmm. Blue jeans and everything he was wearing, but he heard Bridget's voice, and he yelled out to us, "Is that Robin?" And and we're like, yeah. I mean, you know, Bridget's Anglo woman and an Anglo name. So we're like, yeah, it's her. At that time, we didn't even know it was Bridget was her name. And so he started to get on the boat, and he goes, Robin, and she goes, no, my name is Bridget. So he goes, where's Robin? We're like, we're looking for her. He thrusted himself away from us as to like give up his life and say, no, find Robin, leave me alone.
Robin was with him in his car when they went over.
Yeah, Robin was with him. They found her. She was. I was kind of reading up on it, but they found her in the back seat. She had passed away that night. But you know, you think about other people. You know, we weren't the only ones brave that were out there. The victims that were in there were extremely brave. Here we are saving his life, and he says, no, leave me alone. Go save her. You know, that's amazing. That's a hero right there. We weren't able to do anything.
I feel so bad. I've been calling him Hector this whole time, and you're right. His name is Rene.
Yeah, Rene Mata was his name.
So who was Robin to Rene?
They were just buddies. They were just friends. She was out with him, kind of distracting because he was living in Houston at the time, and he came down to be here for his mom's services because she had passed away. And I think that was his last weekend before he had to return to Houston. And they were coming back from Padre Island, and this is when this all went down.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So what other details do you remember from that night that maybe Robert left out?
Let me see. When the Coast Guard was just 100% accurate. And that's the beauty about these statements, is that they are like the smoking gun for us, you know, because so many people really doubt. Now, come on, these are trained military. Well, yes, some military people. It's not really a branch of the military. They fuck with those guys, but they should have been high alert, and it looked like the Boy Scouts were out there. And
1,000%.
the reason I use that word Boy Scouts, when you find these documents that we gave our testimonies, I remember specifically telling the cops. It was like the Boy Scouts were out there.
They were young.
There was a junior troop out there that was doing it. A part that Robert kind of forgot was after they told us they couldn't help us, they sent us to the other side of the causeway, where we had to travel underneath the bridge.
Causeway. Yeah. And Bridget
and all
lost
the following,
her shit.
Yeah, she lost her shit. She was screaming and yelling, "Don't take me there! Don't take me there! Get me away from there!" So we had to go underneath the causeway to the other side of the causeway, where there was another Coast Guard cutter out there.
So basically, we had to move from the north side of the causeway, where we were conversing with the Coast Guard that had gotten there in a huge vessel, and they said, "No, we're not taking those people you have on the boat. You need to transport them under the bridge to the south side and give them to the boat that's there."
And Bridget wasn't having any of this because she was afraid that something was going to fall.
Her trauma was just, she was terrified.
She was hysterical. It was she was just screaming and yelling, and we had to do it. We were trying our best. A little something else that Robert kind of, you just remember, not that you remember different.
Everything you're saying just pops into my head super vividly. Yeah,
because you didn't. It's not that you don't remember. It's not that you didn't get it right. You didn't mention it.
Mm-hmm.
Our goal was to get to Gaspar de Hinojosa. He was the guy that landed on the pillar of the bridge.
That's right.
Now, we had made the decision. Back then, the word triage, we think we're in the forest, the tree. No, we on our own we're able to do a triage at the moment. And we knew, okay, he's in his car, he's not in the water. We'll get him last. We had every intention of getting to him.
Mm-hmm.
We figured there's people in the water. I guess the best way to think about it is that when you see these movies and documentaries about all the trash and the dirt that's in India that's just floating on the river, that's how the causeway around us looked. There was floating debris
everywhere
of cars, trash. Just all kinds of debris all around us. So for us, finding Jeanette that night was a miracle, because we had we didn't even see him until we got closer and were almost right on him.
Wow.
So that part, Robert, Gaspar, we had every intention of getting to him, but the Coast Guard really just kind of threw a whole wrench in the whole system of letting us do what we were trying to do.
As soon as the Coast Guard got there, we all were relieved, but immediately disappointed too, because by this time we had already spent a substantial amount of time alone in the dark, flashing a light on everything from, floating ice chests, clothes, suitcases, things that were in the back of people's vehicles, whatever. We're looking desperately for more survivors, and we had some success, and we could hear the gentleman screaming on the pillars, and we could hear, all of the commotion from the people on the pier yelling, and it was just super chaotic. As soon as the Coast Guard got there, they dismissed us very, very abruptly, like, get away from here, you have no business here. And we're like, whoa, we've been helping, we have these people. And they didn't care. They just were in awe of what was happening, but zero efforts to get somebody in the water, to get somebody to that pillar, to do anything in regards of helping prevent the loss or further loss of life. There was zero effort. These boats just got there to watch because nobody knew what to do.
So what happened to the gentleman that was on the pillar?
He ended up passing away, and we got to see them take him off. Whoever got him, we got to see him taken off of their boat and taken to the ambulance. But at the time, we thought it was Rene, because there's so much miscommunication and misinformation. And even if you were to Google old articles, you'll see that it says
it's all flawed.
22 people in the water. They recovered the ninth survivor. No one got it right. The only one that has had it right and never had a chance to give our version is us. And it's because we were silent. We were some young guys, didn't know better, and the attorneys silenced us. No one cared about the emotions. No one cared about some ghostly figure, some miracle on the ocean that occurred. No one cared. No one cared about that. All they cared about was who died, who survived,
and how much can we recover from it.
And how much can we recover? And what's funny about the how much? You could Google this and you'll find it. The settlement agreement, not the settlement agreement, but the news article about when they settled. They settled for $9 million and there's a quote, and I didn't write it down, but if you Google it, you'll find it. That the guy says this could have had 17 million, but they kept fighting for more and more and more. So they wasted $8 million of the insurance money fighting for a bigger settlement, because they weren't going after the barge company. They were going after the barges themselves.
Brownwater towing.
Wow.
Right. So that just goes to show you the greed that these lawyers had, and I don't say lack of education of any person involved in the lawsuit. I say lack of the know-how of how lawsuits happen, on how settlements are agreed upon. Everyone was in the dark, and this lawyer, Ray Marchand, he was the lead attorney on it, because you can't have 17 lawyers up there arguing. So they put him as the lead attorney, and the greed, this kid, this golden child, and I hate to say it, because that's the word they use.
That's the only way I can refer to him, Roland, because that's the way all the attorneys will refer to him. I never even learned his name.
Yeah, I think his name was Welch, only because I remember seeing it when I was recently looking through all the news articles and stuff like that. There's a bigger story, man, of lawyers being douchebags, where they could have been so much more. I blame a lot of things that have happened in my life on me suffering from this post-traumatic stress. I never got the help I needed. Robert never got the help.
Dude, as soon as we settled the lawsuit, as soon as all that dissolved, Frank called me and said, "Hey, man, if you want to continue to see your therapist, you're gonna have to pick up the bill yourself." I'm like, I paid for that up until then.
Yeah, it was $150 a pop. I remember that.
Yeah,
I remember that.
yeah.
I remember you calling me super pissed off.
Yeah, I was
about
like,
that,
dude,
because
this is helping me, man. And you were like, well, just keep writing your stuff, Rob. I mean, that's what you've been doing, and that's how it stayed. But yeah, as soon as they recovered that monetary value,
Cut you off.
they didn't give two shits about anybody, not the people who survived, not the people who perished, and definitely not the 4 guys who were out there risking their lives to save people.
Damn.
It just completely
that's
dissolved.
And that's the main reason that you'll never see an article or a picture of us in the anniversary ceremonies they've had every year since.
Mm-hmm.
Is that we got such a bad taste of what he was doing and what the other attorneys were doing. It was a publicity stunt for them. It was a way to get their name in the newspaper at our expense.
At the expense of the tragedy, man. Like, at the expense of the tragedy.
Yeah.
They didn't care what had happened. It was just a matter of how much are we going to recover from this for us.
Let me ask you this, Roland. 20 years. It's been a long time. Do you regret not telling the story earlier? Obviously, the gag order is for 20 years, but going into year 1 to year 5 to year 10 to year 15 to year 20, how has this been itching to get out of you?
It's been, the story's been shared with friends, close friends, family members, and stuff like that. And Frank said it clearly. You can't go after the Coast Guard. You're not going to get nowhere with them. So why share the story that they showed up being dicks and asking for a cigarette lighter?
Dude, that's burnt into my head, man. Hey, don't worry about that. Does anybody have a lighter? I need a cigarette.
Yeah. It's gonna be in our statements, bro. I'm telling you.
Yeah, it's in our statements. Right now, it's gonna be in our statements.
And it's 20 years ago in a couple of months, right? But no, I remember that night clearly. I remember the smells, the taste. I remember even what some of us were wearing. Mm-hmm. And the part about it, your question of I wish I could get the story out, is we were silent. We were told no. There's no need to do that. Let's be honest. We're a couple of days after 9/11, and it was not a big deal compared to the thousands and thousands of lives that were lost at the Twin Towers and other places throughout America. But it was a huge thing in the Valley, and I think that the lawyers were saying you're bringing too much negativity to it by saying more people should be held accountable. Oh, and back to Robert, your thing, Robert, where the second interview, we were talking about how we went back out there with the frogman to get him out.
Yeah.
It was a Border Patrol agent that was in the water. You remember you calling him Tubby?
Oh, that's right. It wasn't a DPS trooper.
No, I remember you yelling at the guy saying, "Hey, Tubby, move your fucking boat," because he was in the way.
That's right. And we had to get there, and he was like, "No, you can't get there." I said, "Get your shit out of the way, man. We're going in." And yeah, that's right. That's right. And
yeah. So back. back to your question, Josh, is that we've shared our story with people, with friends, and I like that Robert's a great fucking storyteller, man. I told him, after I heard the first one, I said, man, you've got full permission to do my eulogy. I mean, he puts such passion into it, and me, I'm just a straight, shoot from the hip kind of guy. But us being silent, us not knowing better, and us kind of agreeing, I guess you're right. We shouldn't put negativity out there. We shouldn't put all the bad shit that happens. Hey, man, karma's a motherfucker. Where are these guys now? Ray Marchand, fucking dead. Frank, fucking dead. Other douchebags that were there are in prison for other things, and everyone got their taste. The good karma, man, we did our best out there, and I feel
we're living it.
We're living it, man. I'm living it right now. I get to kiss my boys every night.
Exactly
I get to experience I lost my father 2 years ago in December, so the holidays for us are terrible. Then his birthday's in February, so that's even worse. So for the first, for 6 months out of the year, we're just thinking about the old man. But I've been told I'm proud of you twice in my life, and the first time was saving these people, which really didn't mean much at the time. I didn't understand how proud he could have been of me. And the second time he told me I'm proud of you is that I have a 18-year-old son now that has been openly gay since the age of about 12. And when my father found out that I was, all right, son, this is how we're going to do it. This is where you want to live your life. And we're in Florida at the time. So when I had this conversation, hey, Aaron came out and he said that he's gay, Dad. And so I just want you to know, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, are you okay with it? And I said, yeah, absolutely, Dad. He goes, well, I'm proud of you.
Wow,
it's amazing. It's amazing how caring for people and loving people unconditionally, whether they're strangers that we saved that night or my flesh and blood, were the two proudest moments my father had of me. And for me, that's the biggest.
That's the biggest win.
And he agreed. That's the biggest win. Yeah, I've won. There's no amount of money that could have been given. There's no. A lot of people try to profit off of this. I'll be really honest with you. There were some people that Frank was trying to get his name in every media outlet out there. You had some guys, big lawyers from Houston, talking to Oprah and talking to other news agencies
trying
to
get
this
us on
bigger. Yeah. But 9/11 was the big story at the time. We weren't the big story at the time. I didn't need none of that. My father telling me he was proud of that night was enough. And I didn't realize that until years and years later.
It's funny because when you say that we had very little appreciation for or realization of what we had done that night, and that you didn't come to feel that later, it's very true, man. I was numb to the actions that we did because I was so overwhelmed with the PTSD afterwards. So it didn't matter that we did this or that we did that. I was dealing with what I saw, not with what we accomplished combined in our efforts to save these people. Now, I am proud of what we did that night, man. And I can detach myself from the fear and from the anxiety that night would induce when I think about it sometimes. Now I have a very, very clear understanding that we did something that saved 3 lives, and they're out there and they're still living and they're still with their families, and that's a hell of a thing.
Oh, absolutely, and maybe that's the blessing in it being 20 years later and finally all this coming out, because you would have had a version of an angry young man.
Yeah.
A year ago. I mean, a year after, 5 years, even 10 years. I mean, 10 years ago, I think 10 years ago, I was probably going through a divorce at the time.
Dude, you hit the nail on the head.
We weren't in the right state of mind.
To share,
Robert,
to tell
yeah, we weren't. None of us were able to share. We would have had too much emotion in it. We'd have too much anger in it. Now, it's better to have the story perspective of us being proud of what we were able to do and not consider ourselves anything we did that night heroic. I think what we did that night was stupid because we could have been a part of the casualties. But
I gotta agree with you, man. But stupidity is something we run well with.
Oh no, yeah, we run well with stupidity. Yeah, that's a totally different other podcast right there, Josh.
Hey, Roland, let me ask you about the lady in the water in the white dress or the white blouse, right? When we got to this point, and I got a lot of feedback from a lot of people that I shared the story with, that's kind of where they either like, yeah, this is bullshit, or this is where they tune off. But tell us your experience with this, because this is real.
No, it's absolutely real, and the part about, I mean, come on, my son heard something in the attic last night, and I said, oh, come on, it's bullshit, you're not hearing anything. So I could see how people could easily say, yeah, right, that you're hearing things, you're seeing things, blah blah blah. The problem with that is that when you've got 6 people, 2 of which are strangers to each other and complete strangers to us at the time, that have the same story, that remember it exactly, that's enough evidence.
It's undeniable.
You got more people say there's not UFOs, but guess what? You got several out there that have seen them, that have witnessed them, even maybe have footage of them. So you got to be kind of on the fence of, well, maybe they exist, maybe they don't. But when you have 6 people separated, because we were not allowed to talk to each other in the Port Isabel Police Department.
They were completely segregated. It's like in different rooms. We couldn't even see each other.
Wow.
No, we couldn't even see each other. And we didn't get to say our story, go sit down,
collaborate, or anything.
Yeah, what you telling? Did you mention this? No, we didn't get to see each other. We went back as a group again until Frank had came. Mm-hmm. And of course, they got Bridget and Gustavo's written statement first, because they had to,
they needed medical attention too.
Yeah, they needed medical attention. I didn't think they ended up getting Renez later at the hospital, but I don't know what his version was, because he was in and out of consciousness. But what I say to that is that miracles happen, man. God with a big G or a little G exists out there, and good things happen to good people. And even now, I just lost a buddy of mine that was in high school to COVID yesterday evening.
I'm sorry.
And, I went to bed last night, and I'm like, God damn it, Roland! You're dodging bullets out here left and right. Every time you go to the supermarket, every time you go do things, because COVID's a real deal, man. That's a real deal out there. And as horrible as it sounds, I say, fuck, man, why me? Why? How am I so lucky? And I just think there's a bigger thing out there. There's a bigger picture out there, and we did it. And the scary part is that about our stupidity that night is that you kind of get numb to tragic things, and you're the first one to want to jump head in. Mm-hmm. Everyone says, I'd run into a burning building, or I'd jump into a water to save someone drowning. Until you're put to the test, until you see it happening live, you really don't know how you're going to react. And the one thing that I could tell you without a doubt is there's some shit going down, and me and Robert are there. Robert, I'm by myself with her. All 4 of us are on that boat. I could tell you without a doubt. Well, my first question is, so who did he save? What did they do? Because you got that, I wouldn't say confidence, but you got that spirituality in you that says, I can't be hurt. I have to do this. I have to save this. I have to be a part of this. And Robert, poetic motherfucker, when he was talking about, everyone does want to help someone. You do want to give directions to the guy. You want to help the guy with I just messaged a guy on Facebook right now that needs firewood, because we're freezing our asses off over here in San Antonio. I just messaged a complete stranger a little while ago.
It's in us, man, to want to help, to be of use.
I got firewood up the ass. You want to meet me out at the ranch? Come pick up as much as you could load for your family, and we're all part of that. And I got off track. But back to the lady. 20 years ago, we wrote this down as an and it's an affidavit. So we couldn't even bullshit, because they made it very clear. Anything you say to us has to be accurate. You can't bullshit. And when you tell a young 22, 23-year-old guy that he's going to tell you the God honest truth, there's no need to stretch it. The story itself is amazing. But anyone who doubts it, give us a few moments. Give us time to find these affidavits from 6 people.
Jaws are going to drop, Roland. Jaws are going to drop.
Yeah, man, it's amazing. It's amazing, because our entire story
hinges
that we've
on
shared
it,
with you, not only hinges on it, but it's going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
You'll be able to see it in everyone's perspective. You've yet to speak to Leroy and Tony. When you get a hold of Gustavo and Bridget, you're going to hear the woman that we saw, the woman that we were next to get, and then ended up being Jeanette that we saved.
Mm-hmm.
So what are the main things that you want people to get away from this? Once this is all out and once everybody's told their side, what do you hope that people are going to get out of this from the Rio Grande Valley specifically?
Being such a small community, and let's face it, when I was a kid, my dad used to think, man, in 10 years, we're going to be as big as San Antonio. Well, guess what, Dad? It's been like 30 years, and we're not even near the size of it. The Valley is and will always be a small community. The Valley is a real tight community where people want to do good. And you got a couple of bad apples out there, and you just got to ignore it. But I think if you live your life every day to just 100% and try to do good, try to do what's right, and when you're given the opportunity or you're put into a position that, do I fight or flight? If you just take this story, take others, there's so many stories out there of people that help complete strangers. I see it every day with this COVID. I see it every day with this weather we're having. People are helping people. Don't rely on someone to come help you. Don't rely on the government to come help you. Don't rely on anything like that, because that's not what's going to happen. If you wait for it, it's going to be horrible. My dad had this badass joke, and you probably heard it, so stop me if you have. There's a big massive flood coming, right? Everybody's warning this farmer about it. So the flood starts coming, the water's rising. The guy comes in a big truck and says, "Hey, get in the boat. Get in the truck. I'm here to save you." No, it's okay. I'm gonna fight it out. Water starts raising higher. The guy comes in a little canoe. "Hey, get on. I'm here to save you. Nah, I'm gonna wait it out. The water's up to the roof already. The guy's on the roof. The helicopter comes. "Hey, we're here to save you." He's like, "No, I'm gonna wait it out. So finally the guy dies. The guy's in heaven. He tells God, what happened? I relied on you so much. I needed your help. Why didn't you help me?" He goes, "Motherfucker, I sent you a truck, a boat, and a helicopter, and you didn't get on either one of them."
That is your dad's joke.
So the point is, man, go with your instinct.
Help comes from the people around us.
Help comes in so many ways. And if you're not going to let yourself get a hint of it, take a chance on what's out there. If someone's trying to do better for you, then you get lost in it.
Well, Roland, I'd like to thank you very much for coming on and sharing your story. I know we tried to do this a little earlier, but when it's time, it'll happen.
It'll happen. Yeah.
So
things happen as they should. Things unfold the way they can.
Well, I appreciate your guys' time, man. I'm telling you, Robert's the perfect guy to tell the story. When you finally edited all this stuff. I'm sorry you got the Tarantino version, but that's how.
That's right. I warned him.
Okay, good. Look, Josh. At the end of the day, let's forget about what me and Robert shared. Let's forget about all the stories. Get these statements. And
let them speak for themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
That's just the way it's going to come down to, because you're not going to have opinions. You're not going to have emotions. You're not going to have anything. You're going to have straight from the shot statements that we gave, which, by the way, were not even written or typed by us. They had someone else do it for us.
Three different ones, correct?
Yeah. And we did get to read them and make changes if we wanted to. And I know there was a couple like, no, there was this name and his name, the small stuff that we corrected that instantly, that minute. When the statements are out, when you get a hold of them, and I'm trying to get them for you guys, believe me, I think I'll get them faster than what you guys are doing.
That would be great.
But I think that's where it's really going to come together, Josh, and people get to read what was written 20 years ago. So here's a time capsule that we have access to of what our thoughts and what we saw 20 years ago, and then compare them to what we spoke about. And you're going to see that 6 people, 2 who were strangers to each other and to the 4 of us, all saw the same thing and witnessed the same thing and shared the same.
Immediately after an incredibly traumatic event.
Wow.
It's just, there was no time to prep. It's not like we had any time to meet with Bridget or Gustavo and say, hey, we're all going to say this. No, man, this is what everybody saw.
Amazing. Well, I mean, I'm assuming this is not going to be the last time we got Roland on the phone. So,
not, man.
once again, we'd like to thank you for coming on the podcast, and we're going to keep chipping away. And with your help, and of course with everybody's help that's watching this or listening to this, we need your help. Help us tell this story the right way. That way, we can get as much facts as we can, and share this story that's bigger than anything that we'll ever do.
I love it.
Awesome,
Roland. I love you, brother.
Sounds good.
talk to you soon.
Stay safe.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
See you guys later.
A true story of the Queen Isabella Causeway collapse.